Hi everyone, it's Lara with the MILLA Project. Today I'm meeting with Sean Lunsford, a trained and certified consulting expert with the Workplace Bullying Institute. Welcome, Sean, and thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Before we begin, can you tell me a little bit about the Workplace Bullying Institute?
Sure. It was founded about 15 years ago, actually as a result of one of the founders having gone through a bullying experience at work. Dr. Ruth Namey was a clinician at a mental health clinic at a managed care provider, and her boss began bullying her, and she had no idea what was happening. She didn't understand what was going on. She didn't understand that there were very few things that she could have done any differently than what she did, which was just to respond like I think most people do, with amazement and shock that this was allowed to occur in the workplace. So she, along with her husband, Dr. Gary Namey, began researching the topic and realized that it was very misunderstood. No one had a really good idea of what this was or how it was playing out in American workplaces. But they discovered that many others in international communities had already been taking up this cause. So they started the foundation here in the United States. So even to this day, 15 years later, they're still basically the preeminent and really only advocates for individuals when it comes to workplace bullying. What we do is offer advice to individuals. All of that advice is free. It's on our website at workplacebullying.org. We advise them on how to basically deal with the situation and get some help for themselves, at the very least take command of the situation so they're no longer as affected by it. And we give them some advice, hopefully, to help them move on, find new work, or if they can, resolve the situation where they are. Sadly, that doesn't always work out.
That's true. I have a lot of questions because I did my own set of research, which of course led to me asking you to do this webcast with me, because I was surprised at the lack of laws that protect the employees, and really, well, I was surprised by many things. So I'll go ahead and start asking the questions.
Please do.
So can you tell me, what is bullying in the workplace, and is it the same thing as a hostile work environment?
That's a great question. Yes, they are the same thing. There are a few synonyms for what we call workplace bullying. People call it a hostile work environment. They call it psychological violence. They call it psychological harassment, emotional abuse at work. Basically, all of these describe the same phenomenon. How we define workplace bullying is that it is repeated health-harming mistreatment of an individual by one or more other individuals, who we dub perpetrators. And it can come in the form of verbal abuse, can come in the form of threats or intimidation, or humiliation. It may involve work sabotage. Sometimes it involves exploitation of an individual's vulnerabilities, whatever they are, or it can be a combination of any of those things. So you don't need to define it as one specific set of circumstances. Oftentimes it encompasses many of them, and sometimes people change their tactics depending on what is more effective for them as a bully. You know, so if one thing they're trying on you and you say, I'm not going to let that affect me anymore, they may switch to a completely different tactic to try to gain control over you.
And statistically, do you know who tends to be the bullies and who tend to be the victims? Is there any research?
We've done quite a bit of research, actually. As far as the bullies themselves, they come from all walks of life. There's no real easy way to say, this person's going to be a bully, or I know this person is a bully because of X. Anyone can be a bully. It's very situational. Sadly, people become bullies just because the situation enables it. So it's not that a certain type of person or a certain individual is prone to being a bully. As far as targets go, from studies that we've done, we did 2 national surveys, one in 2007 and one in 2010. From our 2010 survey, we know that approximately 50% of all American workers have either suffered from bullying at some point, or are currently being bullied, or at the very least have seen it in the workplace. That's a huge number. That's a lot of people. And just from those that have been bullied or are being bullied, it comes out to about 35% of all American workers. That's over 50 million Americans that have been affected by this in some way. So it's no small, trivial incident that this is occurring. This is happening to a wide swath of people, and from all kinds of backgrounds. And so basically, like, who the bullying is, it can be any number of people. We know that for the most part, men tend to be bullies more than women. Men 62% and women 38%. Okay. But what's interesting is that men bully men and women about equally. But women tend to bully other women much more frequently. Of all the woman-on-woman bullying, it accounts to about 80% of all bullying where the woman is the perpetrator. So unfortunately, women aren't so kind to other women in the workplace. But again, as far as targets go, it doesn't matter who you are or what kind of a person you are. You can be targeted just because someone decides that that's what they want to do. So,
based off of what I heard you say, it kind of sounds like women tend to be more victimized by both genders. So therefore, is it?
I'm not sure that that's necessarily true.
Okay.
But we do know for a fact that women tend to bully women more frequently, much more frequently than they tend to bully men. So it's about an even breakdown. I mean, women are slightly more bullied as targets than men, but not to a point where I can really say with surety that women are being singled out in this one particular issue.
Okay. When one is bullied, they may feel that they are doing something that is provoking this behavior. For an example, it's making a mistake or standing up for themselves. Is it possible to provoke hostile behavior?
It's a very common thing for targets to experience, that thought that maybe I did something to bring this on myself. While it's a common perception that individuals may have as to why they're being the target of bullying, from our studies, it seems almost irrational or capricious why someone chooses to target someone else for bullying. It may be that they don't like the way you dressed that day, or it may be they had an issue with something and you reminded them of that issue. People are targeted for very different and widely disparate reasons. So we strongly advise people not to think they did something to bring it on themselves. Bullies bully other people because, like I said before, the situation often allows for it. And it's not because an individual is weak or they're deserving of bullying. In fact, that's often far from the case. We know for a fact that a lot of people who are bullied, quite often the most productive people in their office, they're often well liked by their colleagues. They're not emotional. We say that there's about 5 traits that people have that tends to make them targets for bullying, and people are shocked when we say this, but it's because people dare to be independent, they're competent at what they do, they're well liked by their coworkers, they are ethical and honest, and they're not political. And these are traits that most people would say, well, those are fantastic qualities to have if you're in a work environment because you're working around a lot of people, you're trying to get work done. So those are all desirable attributes to have. But strangely enough, those types of qualities are what make people seen as targets for the bully. It's often because the bully is intimidated by these people's abilities. So it's not at all that people are doing something wrong to deserve being bullied. Oftentimes it's because they're doing it right. And we think that understanding that is a great start as far as targets and coming to a point where they can regain their health and regain their emotional well-being because they realize that they didn't do anything to provoke it. It's not their fault. They're often very good people. So we want people to be very clear that that is the case, that you're not doing something wrong. You are probably doing it right. It's the bully that's responsible for making you feel that way.
Good. Let's see. My question was going to be how many people in America are being bullied, but you answered that. You said it's about 50 or 35% are actively being.
It translates into about 50 million Americans that have experienced bullying at some point or another in their professional careers.
That's a lot of people.
That's an awful lot of people, considering, you know, America now is, I think, just over 300 million. So 50 million is a big chunk of that.